All right, guys, we are live. This is the Sherdog, Shillan and Duffy show recapping UFC 313. Pereira versus Ankalaev, Ankalaev versus Pereira. I'm your host. My name is Keith Shillan. Joining me, as always, is the senior editor of sherdog.com, the great Ben Duffy. Ben, how you doing, my man?
Um, Pretty well, all things considered. A number of disappointed people inside the T-Mobile Arena tonight is what I heard over my speakers. I'm not disappointed in that sense, but we got plenty to talk about, don't we?
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. And if this is your first time joining us, we welcome you. This is the most in-depth, we believe this is the most in-depth recap show in the entire world, at least the live one. Shout out to everybody in the chat. We'll try to get to as many comments as possible. We go through from top to bottom, from the championship fight all the way to the opener, covering every single fight. And then we do some fun stuff at the end, talking about whose stock went up, who's went down, who should the UFC get rid of, a bunch of stuff. Let's get right into it. Main event. This week, people were building up the face of the UFC. He was getting ass. Alex Pereira. He was the 2024 Fighter of the Year. He was the 2023 Fighter of the Year. Back-to-back years. 2025. Not so much as Alex Pereira lost his UFC title to challenger Magomed Ankalaev, the new light heavyweight champion. So everything was going right. The end, he has that entrance, but he's got that chant going. I've been in attendance when he won the middleweight title, and that entrance, I think it's the best entrance in all of MMA. And the first round seemed like a classic Alex Pereira round. Like he's doing his thing. He's kind of playing the long game. He's picking his spots. He's winning, but he's going to the legs. When I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh man, he's gonna set up spectacular. Any second now, Ankalaev's legs going to start falling out for him. He's going to start reaching down, trying to catch legs. He's going to come over the top of the high kick or a hook, and it's going to be spectacular. The place is going to go crazy. He's going to call out John Jones. What a moment this is going to be for Alex Pereira. And then it didn't. Everything changed between the first round and the rest of the fight. I felt like it was a kid. Like when I say he was playing the long game, I felt like it was a kid that was going to the prom. He's got his favorite, like, oh, that's the girl I got a crush on. His Becky. She's super hot. Like I got my plans. I'm gonna ask her this way. I'm gonna get flowers. And you know how the kids now, they have to like gotta have a sign, some kind of crowd. They gotta do some slick way. And he gets all this preparation just to find out she already said yes to somebody else because he's playing the long game and Ankalaev was just winning rounds. How'd you see it, man? Well, how'd you score? Actually, first, it was a very close fight. So how'd you score the fight?
I scored it 48-47. Ankalaev, I gave him the middle 3 rounds.
That's exactly how I had it. So we had it the same exact way.
I think if there's any real controversy, if there's any real discussion to be had in the coming weeks, it's going to be over round 3.
Yeah, round 3 was a toss-up round. All 3 judges gave it to Ankalaev. I think round 5 was a little bit of a toss-up round. Me and you both gave it to Alex Pereira. I know some of the judges, I think one or 2 judges gave it to
Sal D'Amato is the one that scored 49-46.
And I don't hate that. You know what? Let's sidetrack. I want to do this real quick, so I don't want to spend too much time on it because people do it every week. Buffer sucks again. Bruce Buffer sucks, dude. We have a super close fight. I'm looking at Twitter. Every single person on planet Earth is scoring the fight 48-47. You know, I shouldn't say every single person on Earth, but majority of people are scoring at 48-47. Yeah. I see a couple 49-46 scorecards on Twitter, but every single person who had it 49-46 had it for Ankalaev. And right away, Buffer, who has the easiest job in the world,
read the 49-46 last.
Yeah, he reads it first. Kills the whole suspense. I go, I love the Ankalaev one. Good job.
Also, though, yes, he could have done a better job with that, but it was spoiled already because when they cut back to the cage, you could see Dana in the back, and Dana did not have an still face on.
Yeah. We'll get to how this affects the UFC in a minute. Let's talk about so one thing. Like I said, Alex Pereira was playing the long game. The problem is It looked a lot like the beginning of the Cleo Roundtree fight. Because remember Cleo Roundtree, right? He was picking his spots, but he wasn't running away with it. You know, it was a little back and forth early. And then as the fight went on, the spots he was picking just came more clear. The openings would get more clear. That's what it felt like. And then nothing happened for his side offensively. Not much other than maybe a high kick late. There wasn't many big moments after that for him.
Yeah. The whole fight felt like it was building towards somebody doing something spectacular, somebody breaking it wide open one way or the other. And when I say that now, I realize that I was expecting Pereira to break it open some way or another, because realistically, Ankalaev was not going to. When I watched Ankalaev fight, win or lose, and it's been overwhelmingly win. The guy hasn't lost a fight since his first fight in the UFC, and he lost 5 seconds of that fight. But
yeah,
my best friend, my freshman year in college drove a 1968 Bronco, like Ford Bronco, with it had a 3 on the tree transmission.
Ford Bronco? Was his name OJ?
No.
Is your best friend OJ Simpson?
I'm not that old. But it was a similar type one, but it didn't even have like a 4 on the floor. It had a 3 on the tree transmission. So it had spectacular torque, but it literally did not have another gear past third. That is Magomed Ankalaev. Like, anytime you hear coaches or fans or media saying he needs to turn it up this round, Ankalaev doesn't have a turn it up. If what he's doing isn't enough to win the fight, he's not going to win the fight. It's been enough overwhelmingly, but he is a measured, like, he's a stand-up grinder. Like, he's Sean Strickland with a greater diversity of strikes. He is, it's just, I was waiting for Pereira to bust it wide open with the one leg kick that finally takes his front leg out from under him, or the left hook that just, the elephant tranquilizer dart gun. But if that wasn't going to happen, this is what we were going to get. Yeah,
I really think Pereira blew it. I feel like you see Ankalaev going back to the corner after the first round, his legs beat up. He's seen this happen so many times with Pereira. I thought Pereira should have came out guns blazing. I think he should have been throwing big shots in the second. Instead, he kind of puts it in cruise. Ankalaev starts landing some shots. He started doing some. He went for a takedown late in the first round, which kind of got Pereira thinking about takedown defense. And then he starts faking some takedowns and landing shots over the top because of it, and because that he was starting to have some moments, and you could see his confidence starting to build as the fight went on, and his striking. The one thing about Pereira, because he stands directly in front of his opponents and he really doesn't slide his head that much, he's not hard to hit. Everybody hits him. It's whether you can hurt him and put him out, but everyone hits him. So you can see this confidence going. He's starting to, do a lot of variety. He's starting to land his straight left. He's starting to throw some kicks. He's just faking with some takedowns or even, trying. All this stuff is happening. And then he's just building more and more attacks. And then the pressure starts coming where he's moving forward and Pereira's moving back. And not only is the pressure going to Pereira, but he's not matching his volume. And the thing is, Ankalaev's not throwing a lot of volume. Like, it wouldn't have been hard to match. Like, he was winning and he was pressuring, but he was just pressuring by stepping forward. He wasn't, he wasn't putting out a, Max Holloway level offense.
No, it was vaguely reminiscent of Strickland versus Adesanya, where it had been so long, maybe, since somebody had just walked forward on the guy and kept him on his back foot. It was an eye-opener to see Ankalaev that stymied just by forward progress and kind of orthodox versus southpaw hand fighting. Shout out to Shane, one of our Sherdog forum mods, who is in the editorial Slack because he also scores fights with us. But he said after the fight, if you told me in advance that Ankalaev was going to be 0 for 11 on takedown attempts, I would have bet thousands of dollars on Pereira.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would have, if you told me the fight goes 25 minutes, Alex Pereira kicks his leg how many times? I think he opened the fight with like 10
14 in the first round.
14 leg
in the first
kicks
round.
14 leg kicks on the first round. he doesn't get taken down, I would have thought that we would be talking about how insanely tough Ankalaev is to take the amount of God punishment that was given out, and we have 10-8 rounds, and he was dropped, and it's a bloody mess. Like, that's, we start talking about Pereira having mercy on him at the end. That's what I would have guessed. So yeah, I think that was a really good point. Some other things that happened. So the pressure happened, and Pereira was moving back. Pereira was struggling getting by the lead hand of Ankalaev. Ankalaev was doing really good hand fighting, finding his range. And then the volume. Pereira's not a huge volume guy anyways. Like, he's never going to be a Max Holloway. I mean, obviously he's a light heavyweight. That's going to be hard to do anyways. But he went from having like a 5 volume in the second round to 3 out of 10 in the third, and then obviously the way the clinch battle happened, basically a 0 in the fourth. And yeah, he might have picked up the volume a little bit in the fifth, but not a guy who might be down, 3-1 or right. Needs the fifth round. Like, he picked it up a little bit, but he went from like a 0 to 2, a 3. Mm-hmm. He still, he threw a couple high kicks for fun, but he never seemed like he had the urgency to really not get the knockout. And I don't know if it was just so worried about the takedown that he was worried about throwing something really big and Ankalaev getting underneath it and getting to his hips or something like that. I don't know what it was, but I mean, Pereira just he looked terrible tonight. And now I want to be very clear. This fight was super close. I mean, there were a lot of people I respect their opinions who scored the fight for Pereira. I think Ankalaev fought his best fight. I felt like Pereira, fought his worst fight, and it was still, 2 judges scored at 48-47.
2 judges scored at 48-47. Looking at the media scores on MMA decisions, it's almost an even split. There are 11 for Ankalaev, 9 for Pereira, and one person scored it a draw. And I don't know how you scored that a draw, because there was nothing even remotely approaching a 10-8 round.
It's a hipster. There's some guy trying to be a hipster. I threw a 10-10 round out because there was no action in round 4 or some shit like that. Like, some guy trying to be a hipster.
Well, except that'd be 48-48. It's 47-47, so we scored a 10-8 round somewhere. A 10-10 round would have made it 48-40. Yeah, I don't know who Eric Richter is. I'm not going to put him on blast. I have no. He's from the New York Post. I don't know how much MMA he normally covers, but there's no possible justification for a 47-47 scorecard.
Maybe he's scoring it like a boxing guy, where there's like a guy get wobbled or something, and he counts as like a standing 8 count. I don't know.
Maybe.
Or maybe he was sending. He tweeted and he meant to put an 8 instead of, and he hit a 7 instead. I don't know.
Here, Nonprofit 87 says something that I'm sure this is going to come up this coming week. I wonder if an undisclosed injury comes out in the coming week. Alex looked off. I'm not interested in making excuses for Alex Pereira. He doesn't need me to do that. I doubt he'll make any for himself, but if he needs it, he's got good people around him. I will say this, though. This may, especially if Pereira just takes 6 months off and comes back and massacres somebody, this may just be what it looks like when a 36, 37-year-old man fights 5 times in 15 months. Like, he may just...
Or just fights in general.
Yeah, just be worn and overtrained. Like, that might be it. Well, a lot will remain to be seen whenever we see Alex Pereira next. Because, yeah, I agree, he looked kind of flat. And I don't know if the best version of him would have won tonight, but Ankalaev fought a pretty damn good fight. Pereira did not look great, and it was still a very competitive fight.
Yeah, that's my point. Like, he's that close to being the best guy in the world. When he has a bad night, he's Ronda Rousey always have the saying, "Be the best fighter in the world, even on your worst night." And he almost was the best fighter in the world on probably his worst performance, other than getting knocked out by Israel Adesanya in an exchange where he's trying to get a knockout, a spectacular knockout himself. Yeah. But the thing, and obviously I don't want to do this because we were talking about this guy fighter of the year, but this is what happens in MMA. So we got to at least ask the question: guys disappear overnight. It's not a baseball player where, you take like a guy like Mike Trout, where you can see his stats have declined over the years and injuries start catching up, and you can see a guy going. And this, I'm not specific of Mike Trout, but batting 313. The next year it's 290. The next year it's 270. Then it's 230, and then he's out of the league. MMA the MMA equivalent would be like guy batting 330, then batting 180 the next season and be out of the league. Like that's how MMA is. And again, I'm not saying that about Pereira, but we've seen it so many times. We've got to ask, even 1-1 lost now, you got to ask the question if a guy's done. And based on his age, heading into tonight, he was the oldest champion in the UFC. If you slip up a little bit, it completely changes your career. And again, I'm not saying he's done. I'm just asking the question, or tossing out the idea.
No, I'm with you. Again, it'll remain to be seen when we see him again. I see there. I mean, there's lots of disagreement going on in the chat right now. Mostly very respectful, which is all we ask. Differences of opinion are what make the world go round. Respect is what makes it work. But I'll say this. This was not a boring fight. It was a frustrating fight, but I was on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Because it was close. Yeah, because it was close. I was intrigued in that sense where the fight didn't suck, but to me, it was a low scoring football game, but you're intrigued because it's coming down to a 50-yard field goal at the end.
Sure.
If it hits it, one guy wins. If they miss, the other team wins.
Yeah. And well, it's close and a defensive battle, but no team is ever more than no team is ever 2 scores behind the whole time. So it could conceivably turn on a dime. And this fight had, even in the 5th round, still had a feeling of that, even as I was frustrated because it was not happening. So,
yeah. So the big loser tonight, and we'll get to this during the Bulls and the Bears, but to me, the big loser, and we talked about this ahead of time, and we said this on the previous show, that the big loser would be the UFC, if not that Ankalaev won, but how he would win. And we said if it's a clinch battle game or low output, we got all of that, and that's how he won. And I mean, you see the comments and the people commenting, the people watching the show, the people who just watched 5-6 hours of a UFC card from starting from the first one, and then now watching this recap show. These are the hardcores. Nobody here is a casual.
No.
No one watches a recap show at 1:33 a.m. unless you're as hardcore as it is, and then you're really hardcore because you're not watching the replay later. You're watching live now. So, but none of these guys here are excited to see him. So my friend who watches 3 cards a year is really not going to be into Magomed Ankalaev. Not going to be able to pronounce his name for another year. And then he won't know him from Islam Makhachev and all the rest of the Dagestanis. So it's not a Russia thing, because obviously we've had Russians who've been, Habib Nurmagomedov is one of the biggest stars in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
It's which Russian one? You have the guy who doesn't speak English. He has no personality. He tried talking trash this week and kind of the best trash talk again. It still comes off as just basically respectful trash talk, if you want to call it that. And then his style, he's not. You can have guys like Alex Pereira is not a big trash talker.
No.
And his style makes him fun. Ankalaev doesn't have that style.
Yeah, and I don't think Ankalaev is a spectacularly boring fighter. He's very measured. That's it. I'll stick with my analogy. He's like just an old school pickup truck that literally doesn't have a gear above third. If his opponent is overmatched, especially if his opponent is overmatched in the striking and just really doesn't have any options but to keep coming at him and trying low percentage stuff, he will wreck him. I mean, he has plenty of knockouts, and they're over people like Johnny Walker, over Ivan Kudalaba, kind of the low fight IQ maniacs who will just run right into him. It's not. If he ends up being a less popular champ than someone like Merab or Bilal, it's not going to be because his fights are more boring. It's just going to be because he has such a nondescript personality, and he dethroned such a universally beloved fighter. Think of Bilal, who gets some love and gets some hate, and then think if he had gotten his belt by dethroning 2014 Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
He'd be the most hated champ in the history of the UFC.
Yeah. How big of a problem do you think the UFC has? Not just in losing Alex Pereira as champion, but just marketing in general. Because I think, let me give a little rant for a second. I think they have a huge problem right now, and I've always said that this is a star-driven sport. Sure. The UFC always comes off as they're the brand. The brand will always survive, and there is some truth to that. But there's also a marketability thing. You know, the WWE wouldn't be the big entity in wrestling if they never found the Hulk Hogan, the guy that, and obviously I'm showing my age, but the guy who was able to take it from this small market thing to Madison Square Garden to sell out shows, and then they were able to pass it to next guys. It's always a star-driven thing. There's not a lot of stars right now. I mean, you go over the guys that have been able to get the casual fans, the guys, and when I say casual, I'm talking about the people who watch 3 cards a year, 4 cards a year. Conor McGregor, biggest star in the sport, he hasn't fought in years. Last time he fought, he broke his leg, hasn't won in years. Who knows what he's doing? He's getting arrested, he's getting accused of rape, he's doing cocaine, he's making movies. Like
he's 195 pounds of solid muscle. Like, he's got multiple problems.
He's up there in age now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say, well, I'd say it's more likely than not we don't see him fight. Or if he does fight, it's going to be like Mike Tyson way past his prime kind of thing where no one's really excited anymore. Nate Diaz obviously is old and washed. Jorge Masvidal's coming back, but he's old and washed. John Jones still has it, but he's up there. He's, is he 40 yet? He's pretty close to 40.
He's 37.
30. Okay, he's 37, but he's not interested in taking certain fights, and he's a guy that always in trouble. Hard to get him in the cage. You never know how long he'll be gone at a time. Habib's retired. Izzy looks washed. I mean, who is a star right now in the UFC?
There's no obvious just standout superstar, at least that is currently a belt holder.
I think Makhachev is a little bit. He's not to the level of the guys I've said, but I think he's like the next tier down.
All right. No, like
he's the okay, this if we were making an Avengers of MMA superstars, he's not Captain America. He's not obviously he's not American, but he's not the Hulk. He's not Iron Man. He's like the next he's the Ant-Man.
Like,
he's
Sean O'Malley is Captain America, and he's not a champ right now. Alex Pereira is Captain Brazil.
Yeah, I'm trying to be hip with the young crowd. So I'm not really helping myself out. But who's the guy who shoots the arrows? That I don't even know.
Hawkeye.
His name. He's Hawkeye. Like, yeah, okay, he's cool. Like, if you're big into Marvel and that guy shows up to Comic-Con, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, that's awesome. Like that, but it's not freaking Iron Man showing up.
Like, what's your superpower? I got a gift card to Cabela's and I went and bought a bunch of shit.
Like, he's the next tier down. Like, he's an Avenger, but he's the next tier down. That's what he is. I think Poirier could be. I really do, because he's got the 2-country thing. He's got the personality. Obviously, he's got the style of his way he fights. I think he could be. I think he's not.
He's got the style outside the cage. He's the best dressed, best groomed fighter.
Yeah, good looking guy. He talks well. He fights. I mean, the way he fights. He's got knockouts over Volkanovski and Holloway. And if he moves up and takes out Makhachev, I mean, yeah, he's the number one guy in my opinion.
Yeah,
but after those two, who else?
The kid Adam Duffy is pointing out that one or more of the fighting nerds are ready to break out into that. Like, whichever one of those guys gets a title fight, it's on.
Yeah, and I apologize, guys. I haven't been scrolling through the chat as much as possible. This is so I apologize for not getting to those. Let's matchmake for a second. Okay. Because I think it's gonna be hard to matchmake. So the way we do matchmaking here is we don't give anybody an option. We say, this is who you're fighting. We're the supreme rulers. We don't take contracts in. We don't take teammates and who's connected to who. We just say, nobody can say no. We're ultimate dictators. What are you doing with these guys?
I'm making Ankalaev's first title defense against the winner of Carlos Ulberg and Jan Blachowicz in 2 weeks.
Okay.
If it's Blachowicz, you've got a built-in rematch. Like, Ankalaev was so salty about that first fight that he literally said, I'm either retiring or I'm never fighting in the United States again. So that's obvious. And then if Olberg wins, it's almost more about what Olberg deserves. That'd be 6 straight wins.
Yeah,
and
he's young.
And he's a fresh face.
Yeah, and he's like all the girls like him. And
plenty of people in the chat, including Bob Chimpson, trying to get himself banned from the chat by spamming the same word 10 times, are saying Yuri Prohaska. I have no problem with that at all. Especially, like, Prohaska is a guy that...
The problem is, sorry to interrupt you. The problem is if Yuri wins, then you have a problem, because Alex Pereira is one fight away, and you really want to see Alex Pereira fight him a third time when he's got 2 knockout wins over him. So if Jan Blachowicz wins, there is a backstory. Mm-hmm. There's unfinished business, former champion, they fought for the title. I see that. I see the argument for Olberg. I'm going to do something that I never do. Ben, we've been doing this show for a really long time now, and I almost never do this. I'll give Pereira the rematch. It wasn't a barn burner fight. You said that half the chat, scored it for Pereira, half of MMA Decision scored it for Pereira. The thing is, you have a star problem. The division is very stale right now. You have a guy that really how many times have this guy stepped up? Took the big moments, took the pay-per-view on 6 weeks out, and was constantly always coming through. I know he doesn't have the, Demetrius Johnson straight title defenses or anything like that. But you're talking about a guy who won back-to-back fight of the years. Again, I don't like the immediate rematches. It's not something I do. It's the best option out there, in my opinion. There's nothing much left.
I wouldn't mind that, but in my world, he's going to be too busy fighting Ciryl Gane.
You're moving him up to heavyweight.
I'm setting him up to heavyweight.
He might do that.
Because guess what? If they rematch and he beats Ankalaev, they're probably going to have to do a trilogy fight. And all that does is it delays the inevitable for maybe a full other year, maybe until it's too late. Because if Pereira had won tonight, wouldn't you have had him against either John Jones, Tom Aspinall, or the winner of Tom Jones or John Jones? Yeah. So that doesn't change that to me. Like, Pereira, I think, go accomplish what you can at heavyweight.
But my thing is, if you're going up to heavyweight, you beating Ankalaev, getting that win back and knocking him out, and then moving up, it looks way better. You avenge your loss. You're moving up. You got the belt over your shoulder. It looks better than beating Ciryl Gane, who John Jones was already beating.
And I'm just throwing Gane out as,
sure,
a name. Who was it throughout Volkov? I'd be fine with that too. I'm in report said Pereira versus Volkov at heavyweight. I don't mind that either. See what Pereira feels like fighting someone who's way obviously bigger than him.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna catch up to the chat. I'm trying to read the some of the comments as we're going. Let's do this real quick before we move on. And I know it's a lot of people at their scorecards. Everyone just post your scorecards in the chat right now. How'd you score the fight? I just want to see how our chat is feeling. So both you and I went Ankalaev. You said MMA Decision was pretty split. You don't have to put like 48, 49. You just put the name, who you scored it for, Ankalaev or Pereira, and we'll read out some scorecards or some names of who scored it for who. So if they come in, you want to read some of the names?
Sure. Scores coming up. Nonprofit 87 gives it to Ankalaev. Adam Duffy gives it to Ankalaev. Pope Ankalaev. Matthew Chalk Ankalaev. Ben Cooley Ankalaev. Kyle Lawheed gives Pereira 1, 3, and 5. Londo 3-2 for Pereira. Butterfield gives it to Alex. Bob Chimpson gives it to Ankalaev 49-46. Confirmed. Bob Chimpson is actually Saudi Amato. Bobby Boucher 3-2 Ankalaev.
Just for the record, I don't hate that scorecard. I didn't score it that way, but I don't hate it for Ankalaev. We're good. Continue.
Iman Report 48-47 Ankalaev. Paul Vivret, big for Ankalaev. And that's what we've got so far. So that feels like about 2/3 Pereira, 1/3 Ankalaev to me.
Yeah. So okay. So, but all right. Let's move on. There's only 10 fights. We had 2 fights canceled last minute. Curtis Blades versus what was that guy's name? Fiziev, and I forgot the other fight. Oh, John Castaneda and
like
Chris Gutierrez.
literally the 2 fighters that I highlighted in my pre-fight column this week, Blades and Gutierrez, both got scratched from the card on like fight weekend. Why do I bother?
So a lot of people were disappointed. I think a lot of people were disappointed who won. I also think they're disappointed with the action. But one thing you'll never disappoint is guaranteed. It's unbelievable. It's not human. Justin Gaethje took on Rafael Fiziev. Justin Gaethje will never disappoint MMA fans, whether you want him to win or whether you want him to lose. It's going to be exciting. It's another all-time Gaethje classic. They honored Robbie Lawler by putting him in the Hall of Fame tonight. We'll get to that in a little bit. But he's like Robbie Lawler times 10. It's, Robbie Lawler had 4, 5, 6 incredible fights. Gaethje's, it's got to be I don't know how many fights he's got in the UFC so far, but it's been absolutely spectacular. We had another one.
Gaethje, that was his 14th fight in the UFC. Every single one of them has been incredible.
Absolutely.
And that's on the tail of a 8 or 9 fight run in World Series of Fighting, where every single fight was incredible, sometimes to his detriment. Some of those guys probably didn't need a great fight, but yeah, it's.
And if just for the record, if the fight wasn't incredible, that means the result was like Gaethje. Like I always go back to like Gaethje absolutely destroying James Vick, or him destroying Donald Cerrone. The fight wasn't, back and forth barn burner, but it was spectacular finish. I do want to point this out. ESPN Plus sucked tonight for about 1 or 2 minutes in the first round. My feed froze a little bit, so it was after.
Everybody, mess with Keith. Tell him that Fiziev shot a takedown and took Justin Gaethje down.
So I saw that. So this is where what froze. I saw Gaethje was kind of stuck underneath in between his legs. As Gaethje was escaping and getting to his feet, then it froze to about, 30 seconds left in the first round. Everybody said they scored for Fiziev. Then Gaethje kind of won the last two rounds. So the one thing about Justin Gaethje that I don't think it gets enough credit, no one ever challenges his toughness. Everyone knows he's the toughest freaking human being. But it's the mental thing. The getting hurt, getting rocked, and not just being able to bite down your mouthpiece's throat, but not to mentally panic, to still find a way to dig deep. I asked Justin Poirier about it once, and he said that's fighting. And I wanted to correct him, no, that's because you're not human. Even on in MMA standards, there's certain people that are different where times get hard. It's not fighting. A lot of guys will crumble in those moments. There's a few that's when they have their most fun. And I feel like Gaethje's one of them.
I am completely with you. And I'm glad that you're kind of separating out the mental thing from just the physical. Okay, yeah, I got punched in the face and kicked in the gut, and I'm going to keep marching forward even though I want to go pass out and take a shit. And I've said, and you've agreed with me multiple times on previews and recaps, that when we talk about a fighter quitting or wilting or whatever, it's not that they're scared. It's that all their ideas are gone. They know they're losing and they don't know what to do. He doesn't fall to that either, because tonight, right off the bat, the difference in speed, especially in the first round and a half, was daunting. Fiziev looked so much faster, was crisp, hitting with power.
Even the second round, it was that way, really. Yeah.
And Gaethje he kept digging into his bag of tricks. He discovered the hockey uppercut, in the second round, and he proceeded to spam that uppercut on him about 10 more times. He found a way to win. He's like the veteran pitcher or the veteran quarterback that figures out ways to win when they don't have their best stuff.
Yeah. You're not hitting your 98-mile-per-hour fastball, so you got to start throwing the curve more. You got to go, I don't know, low and outside instead of coming high like you normally do or something. One thing, like we just talked about the mental game, but we don't we don't think of Justin Gaethje as a high fight IQ guy, but he has that. Like, no, again, like when we think of like high fight IQ guys, we think of like a Alex Volkanovski and one of these
Sure.
guys, and who could really break down their opponents. But what I mean by is Gaethje's ability to realize something's not working and then going to plan B or C. And it really, to me, came down to, and I talked to my friend Ian Parker from ESPN about this. The battle was the distance. Fiziev's had such a speed advantage, especially from distance. His ability to throw the hand speed was fairly quick, fairly even. But it's the kicking game, and which is weird because you think about, Gaethje's this thundering kicker, but it was the speed and the body kicks that Fiziev. So once Gaethje was able to get to the pocket, he had so much success. I mean, his overhand right was landing over and over. And then when they got really close, where they're going chest to chest, and he's getting that deep, he's got the when I used to tell the guys, I say, grab that collar on the guys, grab that collar tie, and he's in there and he's keeping the head down and he's getting a couple uppercuts. One thing Gaethje doesn't get credit for is how like, he continues to add tools to his game as he's advanced. Like since he started from the UFC to now, everyone just said, "Oh, he got more control." It's not that he's added skills.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing he didn't have to this level is suddenly he's a great high kicker. Like he throws some great high kicks that the last couple, 3 or 4 fights. I mean, there was a moment where he was in the clinch and he high kicked himself out of it and landed. It was pretty freaking spectacular. But yeah, the pocket, the distance, that's where, and then that was also Gaethje's ability. I mean, you could see the size difference. It was Gaethje's ability to lean on him and weigh on him and kind of get his power shots in. And he really had to go with I can't match this guy's speed, so I got to hit harder than him. And he gave himself those opportunities to start landing the big, hard power shots.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I wanted the short notice, like how much, and obviously Fiziev took a gamble, and we always think about like what is it going to do for their career, taking another loss. Yeah, it makes your career go on, but he also got probably paid very well, so it's it's easier to take a gamble when you get paid very well to take a fight. Good.
Obviously, taking the fight on 12 or 13 days notice after a year and a half layoff isn't ideal, but it's worth noting that Fiziev, his gas tank is probably the least elite part of his entire game. Like he got tired in their first fight and he had a full camp and he was younger. He gets tired. He is a muscle bound guy with lots of explosive movements. Like it's not many humans with that build and that fight style can keep their foot on the gas for 15 full minutes. So I give him a little bit of a pass, but he always has gas tank issues and he's fighting a guy he'd already fought once.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And if you're not in fight ready, go crazy hard 15 minutes for a fight, then you shouldn't be taking a fight with Justin Gaethje, because there's no way you didn't know that's the kind of fight you're gonna get. It's guaranteed. Fiziev's in a tough situation because I think he's too small for 155, but like when we talk about his gas tank, like cutting down to 145 is not gonna that's gonna just strain it even worse. So I feel like he's this guy, he's just a tweener. Like I think he could make 145, and it might be something he might want to do just to not be undersized. I just don't know if it's going to help him improve, but just something he should consider. Let me ask you this before we move on to who should these guys fight next. One thing we always like to say is like the phone call. We do the phone call thing. Like UFC's picking up phone, Islam Makhachev's ready, and I always think about like, all right, I call this person up. Hey, you want the fight? Nope. Okay. Who's my number 2 person? Boom. Who's my number 3 person? I know you know what I'm saying. I'm just explaining it to the listeners. How many phone calls until you get? If you're running the UFC, how many phone calls until you call Justin Gaethje?
3.
Okay. Who's the 2 before him?
Well, I'm not sure. I'd have to think.
Okay. How about I give you the 2 and
okay.
First phone call, Ilya Taporia.
Yeah.
Second phone call, Arman Tsarukyan.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a third phone call. I'm going to give Charles Oliveira.
I'm good with that because here's the thing.
So he's my fourth.
Gaethje is that high on my phone list, whether you put him 3, 4, whatever, mostly because of his marketability and the fight's marketability,
Sure.
rather than what I think his chances actually would be of beating Islam Makhachev.
Sure.
Because if they matched him up with Makhachev later this year, Makhachev is going to be like minus 600.
Yeah, he's gonna be a big favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll be one of those fights where I'm like, yeah, I get why, because I don't think Gaethje's going to have much chance to do Gaethje things.
So I'm in a report that says Max Holloway is my fourth. I don't mind that call if Max Holloway gets a win first. So say Max Holloway fought something. He just lost his last fight. If he fought even a Moicano and beat Moicano, that I'd probably put Holloway over it just because different face in the division. So that said, let's do. Well, what are we doing with Justin Gaethje?
Just go ahead and rebook the Hooker fight. I liked it then. I like it now, and yeah, like go ahead and remake Gaethje versus Hooker.
Yeah, I don't hate that because you kind of check a couple boxes, and we always talk about this. There's a couple of weight classes, the top of the division. It's impossible to make bad fights from bantamweight to probably welterweight, or even flyweight to welterweight. The top 10, it's hard to make a bad fight. So, and then you add in Justin Gaethje, it's hard. It makes it even harder to make a bad fight. And then obviously, Dan Hooker's always a blood and guts guy who kind of deserves that big fight. And we also know, and again, we both kind of have the same philosophy when it comes to fighters. We don't think people are scared, but we definitely know Dan Hooker's not scared of anybody.
No.
But I'm gonna do a different fight instead, just because, and this is the only reason we're running out of time. Based on these two guys, I feel like Gaethje and Poirier needs to do a trilogy fight. Poirier might. He said, he's talking about having one more fight, or who knows. I never.
Oh, and he was even after his last fight, he was like, I'm gonna need to go home, talk to my family, talk to my team, and he's one of those guys where when he says he's retired, I believe him.
He might be a little bit more believable than most retirements, but yeah, I just want that one more time, and I don't need it because you're gonna have a great fight with Justin Gaethje, but I feel like they both deserve it. The two of when we talk about if we talk about action fighters, the Mount Rushmore of action fighters, those two guys are penciled in.
Yes.
It's not chiseling. Let's start working on Poirier's nose right now. Get up there and Fiziev's in a tough situation. He's lost 3 in a row.
He sure has.
But he's lost to studs, and he's a stud, and he's action. He's lost 3 in a row, but I don't feel like his stack really fell that far.
No, and if anything, obviously it would have been the best possible thing for his stock if he had avenged himself and beaten Gaethje, but the next best thing was to prove that he still is, in fact, basically the fighter he was in terms of skills, physicality. Sure. He did not look like his knee is fine. We know. His footwork was fine. He shot a takedown that looked fine. He was kicking all over the place. So he is still a young guy. He's still just 30 or 31. He appears to be in fine physical shape. He's got time. Hell, he could string together a couple wins and become a contender. I'm not sure it happens, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. So to me, he needs a top 10 or top 15-ish fighter, probably one coming off a loss as well. You want me to throw out my ideas?
Yeah.
All right. I've got either Renato Moicano or I've got one half of the Patty versus Chandler fight at 314.
Okay. I don't mind either of those. Again, lightweight. I'm using his name. Again, I feel the same way you feel. I feel the same way he's not completely out of contention. And if he went on,
are you going to get this man roofied?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm giving him the other lightweight higher in the card. I'm giving him Ignacio Bahamondes.
Okay.
Just because he's been in the UFC longer, I'm giving him the bigger name. I'm giving that a Fight Night main event.
Beautiful.
Or third from the top of pay-per-view or something. I'm giving him a pretty big moment. And again, if he wins, if he does decide to go down to featherweight, and I guess I'm just throwing that out there, it might not be an option. Just when you look at him, he looks like a featherweight. I thought him like Edson Barbosa. just
Okay.
because how freaking fun would be those two guys swinging it out. Let's speaking of Ignacio Bahamondes, he took on Jalen Turner, winning by first round submission. I will say this: we talked about it being a stand-up battle, but we both threw out that they both are underrated grapplers.
Yes.
We talked about Bahamondes being a sub, having sub ability. When you add in, I mean, his size, his age, being well-rounded, dude, I'm sold. I mean, I was sold heading into this fight. I'm even more sold now.
I was sold on him as well. Even I mean, we both picked Mondays in this one, and here's the thing: even if he goes another 5 years without tapping out anybody else, he's given everybody something to think about. Like, it's like having to prepare for Ignacio Bahamondes just got that much more complicated. What a fantastic performance.
So one thing I will say, and he's got to have those long legs. So if he's put on his back, he's always going to be in danger. But just because it's hard to train with guys with that long legs, even when you think you're out. When you normally you're posturing up in someone's guard, he still has the legs where you're not completely out of his legs like you would other guys. That said, I still don't think it's the best strategy to play a ground BJJ game in the lightweight division as you go up. I would bet against that person who's playing that game more often than not. Again, I'm all in on Bahamondes more based on his age and his skill set. It's the really tough division, so I'm not calling him a future champion, but it's not the realm of possibility.
It absolutely isn't. Shout out to our man Dev. It was a Tony Ferguson type performance, and it is not recommendable. It's not the highest fight IQ thing, but you can't front on it if it works. Because normally, when you're on the bottom, like throwing elbows and short punches from the bottom are not nearly as effective as just getting some separation, shrimping, and standing up. But if it works, there's only so much we can say. And it was a very Tony Ferguson type, or Tony Ferguson or Kenny Florian type thing where he did actual harm off the bottom, got the top fighter in reactive mode, and then subbed him. Beautiful stuff.
Yeah, and so we'll talk about Jalen Turner. Jalen Turner supposedly retired tonight. We talked about it like when Dustin Poirier eventually says he's going to hang it up. You believe him? I don't believe this retirement for 1 second. I think this is a heat of the moment type situation. I mean, he has been out, so maybe he was thinking about it. But dude's 29 years old.
I start from the assumption that any announced MMA retirement is not real, and he checks all the boxes for it definitely not to be real. Yeah. 1, he's under 30. 2, he did it right after a loss. Yeah. Like no discussion, no cooling down period. 3, his corner looks surprised as shit. Like if your closest confidants that you have spent probably, hundreds of hours over the last couple months talking specifically about your professional life have no idea that you're about to drop your gloves if you lose. Yeah. You're probably just frustrated.
Yeah, people are saying that he's been thinking about it since UFC 300. Oh yeah, you mean when he lost that fight too? Like, yeah. You can't tell me he's not going to go in the gym or talk to a coach. They're going to look at his film and say, "Hey, you were winning. You stopped the takedown. You're on top of him."
And by the way, if you fight out your contract, even if you lose all 3 of these fights, you're $150,000 richer. What else are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I can't imagine him retiring, and especially when you see his skill set. Oh yeah, you lost to Mike Conlon, but you almost knocked him out. You lost to Bahamondes, but you had him hurt. No, you were on top of him. I shouldn't say hurt. You were on top of him. Jalen, what if we go up to welterweight? See how you feel. Let's get you. Let's do a training camp. Get you up to 170. Move around. Hit the pad. Show him on some friggin' machine that he hits harder at 170. So something like that. Like this is how much I don't believe in the retirement. I want to matchmake him.
Go for it.
If he stays at lightweight, which if I was his team, I would suggest moving out to welterweight. But if he stays at lightweight, I'm getting him Nasrat Hakparas. And if he moves up to welterweight, I'll give him Michael Chiesa.
See, I think something like Chiesa at welterweight would be brilliant. Either give him a fellow former lightweight who can tell him, see, it's okay, we can do this, or just let him get his feet wet against a Tim Means, Alex Morono type, assuming Morono doesn't get cut after losing tonight. Just let him get his feet wet at 170, because he still has a ton of upside. I should have saved it, because whoever said that he looks incredible when he wins and terrible when he loses has got it nailed. And sometimes fighters who are like that, that's just how they are. And other times they just need to make a few little adjustments. And then all of a sudden they stop losing very much and they just look spectacular when they win. Again, Charles Oliveira, Renato Moicano.
That's a really good point. Yeah, like when you have I would say the people have flashes and then they go on a run. You're like, oh well, we've seen it. That's why, Jan Blachowicz when he first came to the UFC. I already mentioned that I was putting Bahamondes versus Rafael Fiziev. So what were you doing, Bahamondes?
I like yours better than mine, but because I went lower. I was going to say if Drew Dober beats Manuel Torres in 3 weeks, do Bahamondes versus Dober.
I'll say this, which I like about Bahamondes, all the stuff I said, his size, his age, is well-rounded. That Bilal Muhammad, whatever they call that team there in Chicago, they're a nice little run. They're like a nice
Valley Flow?
Yeah, that's a nice little team right there. They kind of make a name for this. I know they've been around for a while, but...
Well, and it's I think of it as really Yair Rodriguez as the first guy to kind of make them famous outside of the Midwest. And if he can ruin Patricio Pitbull's...
Juliana Pena there too? A little... Juliana Pena like trains out of there. And that's not like her primary, but she trains out of there. Like I think all like the Chicago-based people like might not do their full camps, but there's like a connection there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so, but yeah, that team. I mean, I think it's it's not fight with nerds hot, but it's getting there. Like I kind of like that team a lot.
Agreed.
And before that, let's do this fight pretty quick. I don't want to do this fight. Let's before we. All right, let's just get over it. All right, Amanda Lemos took on Yasmin Lucendo. Lemos winning by unanimous decision. We had a split in this. You got the right pick. You picked Amanda Lemos. This fight was terrible. Not just that it was a terrible fight because there was no action, but like, oh my God, Lucendo was so much worse than I thought. Like I thought she'd do so much. Not that she would lose, but like she didn't understand underhooks and overhooks.
Agreed. She seemed really young, kind of underskilled in terms of being undertrained for specific situations and positions. And who it reminds me of, I mean, as much as she was briefly kind of a mascot for our show and one of our first kind of inside jokes, Ariane Carnelossi, where she came to the UFC with obvious physical tools. I mean, just this completely jacked straw weight. But even when she was a stronger woman, was getting out wrestled, getting out struck, just because she seemed underskilled. Lucendo seemed that way. Like just Lemos was obviously just such a better fighter.
No urgency when she was taken down too. Like there's nothing worse than just being held down on bottom and not doing anything. Like I'd rather have a fighter like give up their back trying to get up and get choked out than just like laying on your back and getting control, especially the third. When you're down 2-0, she ends up on top, and now you got to play the guard game and be on. Like you're about to lose. You're 2 minutes away. Fuck, dude, make something happen. Like bridge, get off your back. Try to, if you get choked out, you get choked out. Well, I'm gonna lose anyways. Instead of just laying down there. It's like when you're down by 21 points in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes left, you start throwing bombs. You don't hand the ball off.
Dev and Ben Cooley have kind of been talking in the chat, saying that it looked like Lucendo was scared of Lemos. I can get with that because she seemed really gun shy on the feet and on the ground. It was all just focused on not getting ground and pounded. It was close the guard, get at least one overhook, 2 overhooks half the time where you're just like, at that point, you're not trying to mount offense or even escape. You're just trying not to get punched.
Yeah. I don't.
Matua killing me.
Yeah, that was a great comment, but I'm like, I probably should take that one now. I don't know if she's scared of Lemos or it was more of the step up in competition. Like, I don't know if it was particular to Lemos because the way Lemos fights, like, she don't beat the shit out of you. You know, she's not this. I mean, I know she had that spectacular performance against what's her name? The stand-up girl, the striker. I can't think of her name. She's been around for.
Ooh, Marina Rodriguez.
I mean, yeah, Rodriguez. Yeah, she had that spectacular knock, but really, I mean, she's not like this. It's not Chris Cyborg.
No.
So, I think it might have been the pay-per-view, the step up in competition. If I win this, I'm a top 5. I think it might be more of the moment than it. But I think the referee had moments to step in and could have stand him up. But again, I don't blame the referee. But I think that there was times they could have. Lemos in the hand, like I started with Lucendo because obviously there's bigger future with her. Lemos, it's hard to get excited about a fighter at her age and the people she's already lost to. Like this wasn't a plus for the UFC, in my opinion.
No.
Like this is not the one they wanted to win. So I know I kind of ignored Lemos a little bit, but that's why. What are you doing with Lemos?
If Tatiana Suarez fights again, I'm having her fight her because you mentioned the problem. Lemos has already fought just about everybody else in the top 10. She's either beaten them or she's lost in a way that we don't really need to see the rematch. Suarez is somebody that, I mean, on standing in the division probably qualifies as top 10-ish. And it's 2 women that we don't need to see fight Weili Zhang again anytime ever. So just let them beat each other up on a weekend that I'm off.
Yeah, we have the same exact fight. Just trying to. I think Lemos is a perfect stylist matchup for Tatiana Suarez to kind of. I haven't completely jumped off the Tatiana Suarez bandwagon, but that's a bounce back for Suarez.
Yeah.
Lucendo, I'm going way down. I'm getting her a bounce back fight. I give her Ketlin Souza.
Yeah. I mean, I was keeping her in this sort of same end of the pool. I said Tabitha Ricci, but
you're going way higher fighter than I went.
But Ricci's also coming off a loss, so one or the other.
Skill wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Ricci's pretty good. Before that, Bobby King Green took on Mauricio Ruffy winning by first round TKO. I mean, dude, what a friggin' knockout. I mean, we might have knockout of the year already.
Shout out to Sherdog editor-in-chief, my boss and yours, Mike Fridley, who in the editorial Slack, just very casually, he doesn't usually weigh in on that sort of thing, but he was like, as they're walking out, he's like, Green looks bone dry. Watch for a round 1 knockout.
There you go. Yeah.
Like Green looked like he hadn't even warmed up. And so I was like, oh, yeah, if he comes out like if he did the Donald Cerrone like warm up where my warm up will just be losing the first round, that's not going to fly against Mauricio Ruffy.
I just imagine Mike out in Ohio just looking at their body like the guy comes out like looking like he went through a slip and slide. Oh, this is going to be a war. This is going to be. I mean, this to me, this story is about Ruffy. I mean, this guy. What a spectacular run this guy's had so far in the UFC. I mean, the guy's so athletic. Just to do what he did, like he threw this left hook and they just followed it with a spinning wheel kick. It's the second time he has this spectacular knockouts like this in the UFC. I mean, he's accurate. I mean, it's one of the greatest KOs I've ever seen. It's probably locked for knockout of the year.
It's easily my knockout of the year so far, and it's one that if that ends up being the best knockout we see this year, that's not a bad thing. And yeah, I mean, I'll have to think, but it's better than any knockout I saw last year. Like it's one of the better knockouts in recent memory. It was fantastic, and the stakes make it matter that it was on a pay-per-view main card, that it was a step up for a red hot prospect. Like it all it all adds up. Good stuff.
I Yeah, so you got to ask the question about Bobby Green is Bobby Green shot, and again before we else do it, what do you mean he's shot like his chin crushed? Yeah, I mean that kick could have knocked out anybody. But what I mean by that is when you're starting to lose it, those kind of kicks land. Like those kind of things, like spectacular knockouts seem to happen.
Yeah,
when you're starting to lose it. Does that make sense?
Of course, yeah. If it was easy,
like
if it was easy to do that, if Bobby Green had been susceptible to that his whole career, he'd have a lot more highlight reel knockout losses.
Yeah, let's talk about the fight nerd shit because I mean this team. You mentioned it already about stars and that team 2 years ago. People didn't know who this team was. They got a team that is just wrecking everybody. They're not just winning; they're winning in spectacular fashion over and over and over again.
And because of the way they're winning, and because of just the visual hook of the person throwing on the taped up glasses afterwards, you're aware of it as it's going on. It's not a thing like Renzo Gracie Philly where somebody finally had to go. You realize these guys have won their last 14 fights, right? And you're like, oh yeah, him. Oh, you're right. No, this is more like the last time I can remember a single team kind of getting on a run like this would be like 10 years ago when Bang Ludwig was Team Alpha Male and he was everybody's coach of the year in like 2013, 2014.
Yeah. But what was it? So, yeah, that's a good example. But I'm thinking about the run they're on. So Ludwig came in and he went to Team Alpha Male. He went to a team that was already established with guys that already established and kind of brought them to a little bit higher level. These are guys that 2 years ago were unknown. I mean, nobody knew. I mean, most hardcore guys. But I mean, like Gene Silva wasn't like people talking about UFC and college practice and obviously Ruffy. I mean, the most established guy ranking wise, Kyle Bahario. He might be the one that's least exciting of these four, and that guy's 1 or 2 wins away from, UFC title shot. I mean, he's right there. He's probably fighting a number 1 contender matchup next. I was thinking about, and I'm going way back in the time machine. I'm thinking about like Shootbox when they first showed up in Pride. Vanderlei, Shogun, Anderson Silva. The
like
run
even Ninja was still killing people in the early part.
Ninja. That's what I'm thinking of. But to do this now in 2025, I would say they feel like I imagine like what Tombstone, Arizona was like before the Cowboys showed up. Like these are the new Cowboys. Like Ruffy's Curly Bill and Gene Silva is Ike and someone needs to show up. Like who's the Doc Holliday and the Earp brothers to save the day because this team is fucking wrecking everybody.
Here's the crazy thing because you just mentioned Shoot-a-Box.
Yeah,
I mentioned Team Alpha Male in the mid teens. Shoot-a-Box had a signature style. It's Muay Thai with pathological aggression, great conditioning, and a focus on knees in the clinch. Team Alpha Male, it's a bunch of stocky wrestlers with a great front headlock series. Oh, and all of a sudden they're really smooth boxers. Like, has there ever been a team that developed this many red hot prospects in this short of time with different fight styles?
Yeah,
like because the guys don't fight alike. Like, there's no cookie cutter just stamping out the next fighting nerds fighter.
One thing about that, they're all like the three, like Ruffy, Silva, and Prentice are super fast. They're super athletic. Mm-hmm. So I'll give them that. I want to go back. There was a comment. I forgot who said it. It said, 90% of media was picking Fiziev over Gaethje. Not me and Ben. We both picked Gaethje. Yep. So.
When we make a unanimous underdog pick,
that was a unanimous underdog pick. But we did pick Alex Pereira, so we can't brag too much. So, Ruffy called out Beneil Dariush, and it's just a weird call out because I don't understand why people call Dariush like he's super tough, but there's no like I don't know, like he's not gonna mark it. He's like gotta pray for your soul and
I was gonna say if Ruffy and Dariush fight, the only guaranteed winner is Jesus because he's getting thanked. But Dariush
Jesus always the winner. Ben, Jesus always the winner.
Oh,
after my reference on the on the previous show, I better.
And he's also calling out a guy that's been on the shelf for 15 months, is like 39 years old, and did he lose his last 2 in a row, Dariush? Like
I'm not sure. He lost to who did he lose to? He lost to John
he got destroyed by Sarukian.
Oh, Sarukian, yeah. That said, I'm giving him the fight. Like he called it. I don't mind the range. I thought about Michael Chandler. If Michael Chandler, I know he's
Just
fighting
Patty,
but I feel like that's just like that's. I thought about if Gaethje, when I was, I'm going up my list before Gaethje fought. I'm like, if Gaethje lost, like that would be kind of really fun. But yeah, give him Dariush. He called for a fight night. Like I like that he called. Not only did he call for Dariush, but he like said where, when it should be.
And anytime somebody makes a plausible call out, I'm all for giving them what they want, because that beats the hell out of yet one more fighter who has no idea who they want to call out. Like, they're going to ask you. I'd be like, I don't know. Or people that just make ridiculous, unrealistic call outs, like, someone makes a plausible call out, give them what they want.
Yeah, like when Joaquin Buckley called for a fight with Conor McGregor, and it's like, oh, you mean the guy who fights once every 3 years, the biggest star? So we're going to give to Joaquin Buckley before he went on his run, like 2 or 3 fights ago. Yeah. To me, Bobby Green at this point, I tried looking to get like someone that it wasn't super obvious to give like him against a young up and coming guy who kind of deserves the Bobby Green range of fighter. And I couldn't find him. So I want the little older guy, but he is on he's won a lot in the UFC. I'm going Mateusz Rebecki.
I don't hate the Rebecki fight. I was gonna, and
this
is gonna sound.
Younger. I want a guy in his 20s, but I couldn't find one.
I got one that's younger. My pick is on April 12th. Jim Miller is fighting Chase Hooper. If Hooper wins, give him green.
Oh. It's so funny when you're like, I got someone younger. Jim Miller is.
They've already fought, unfortunately, but yeah, Chase.
Yeah.
At that point, if Hooper beats Miller, 1, that's I think 5 wins in a row for him, and 2, Jim Miller continues to not be an easy out. If Hooper beats Miller uncontroversially, he really has turned some kind of corner. So yeah.
Before we get to the prelims, and there's only 5 of them, so we should be able to buzz through them pretty quick. We'll take a little break, and we're going to talk about ruthless Robbie Lawler. They announced that he got into the UFC Hall of Fame. Real quick, I mean, Robbie Lawler, ultimate blood and guts kind of guy. Your grandchildren say, Papa Ben, tell me about ruthless Robbie Lawler. What do you tell them?
He wasn't the best fighter in the world, but he may have been the awesomest fighter in the world.
Yeah,
he's about as universally beloved as they get. Like when your farewell reel has a bunch of current contenders sharing their favorite memory of you, you're something special. And I said something similar to this after, he knocked out Nico Price and retired, but I was reminded again because, they panned to him after his hype reel. He's got tears in his eyes.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see him so unguarded, because I persist in saying that he may be the high level fighter in the entire history of MMA that we know the least about personally, aside from people that spoke no English like Fedor. But even Fedor, you can name kind of more things. What do I know about Robbie Lawler? He was born in California, lived most of his life in Iowa, and then moved to Florida late in his career. He really likes Iowa Hawkeyes football. I don't know how many kids he has. There's never been any scandals or arrests. No. He doesn't have a favorite food that we all know about. He's always been a guarded person. He entertains us in the cage and then goes and is a family man and a teammate outside of it. It's kind of wild to see the dude show emotion other than just pumping his fist after a win.
Yeah, a guy that nobody knows about, but everybody loves him. It's so funny when I think of Robbie Lawler. I don't think, and I don't know why. My first thought of Robbie Lawler is never the Rory McDonald fight or calls Condit in these freaking wars and his lip hanging off. I think of the guy that was fighting at 20 years old, 21, whatever he was, in the UFC. I don't know when it was, UFC 30 or something like that. And he was the next Matt Hughes. And I remember him losing to Pete Spratt and be considered a bust. And then I think he washed out of the UFC shortly after that. And then he was like bouncing around different, Strike Force and different other ones and Rumble on the Rock and stuff. And then losing and then getting brought back in to fight Josh Cossey, just kind of be like somewhat of a name. And just looking at him like, oh man, this was the guy that was supposed to be super hyped and never lived up to it. And then like 5, 6, 7, I don't know, the freaking decade after he, was supposed to be the man, then he actually became the man. That's what a guy that reinvented himself and turned around his career. Like to me, Robbie Lawler is like the first guy I think of.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. And sometimes, stuff like that comes down to someone just finding the right camp. Something changes in them. In his case, it was just a literal physical thing. Like there's a reason that he fought at 185 for most of his kind of wilderness years between 2008 and 2015. He discovered he had asthma. So he moved from Iowa to Florida, started training at the camp that changes names every 3 months, with Black Cillians for a lot of the time there, dropped back down to 170. But yeah, he basically, moved camps and stopped doing hard sparring for the last, 8 years of his career. And that's what it took for him. But I agree. He is maybe the greatest mid-career reinvention rebirth in MMA history. It's like him or Charles Oliveira.
Yeah, Charles Oliveira is another really, really good example. The Robbie Lawler didn't know he had asthma because even he doesn't know anything about himself. So, so the second week in a row, we introduced this segment last week. It's gonna take about maybe 1 minute. Very popular. People were loving it, and this is the Get to Know Your Host segment where we both asked a question. Last week it was about board games. Ben, you have a question this week. We'll throw it out the chat for all the people that answer what their favorite memory. But what is your question?
What is your all-time greatest or favorite sports memory, non-combat sports only?
You want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I'm happy to go first.
Okay.
I thought about it a little bit since I came up with the question. I'll go back to 2008 and the day that Cal Ripken and Tony Gwynn were both inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Like, I grew up in Maryland. Cal Ripken was everybody's hero. But just, to see those two kind of get their flowers on the same day, two of the, at the time, closest to unanimous Hall of Fame selections of all time. Like, they were both over 97%. Because I've never been a believer in sports figures as role models generally. Like, I don't want to point out any like athlete to my kids and be like, that's your example of how to be a good family man or a good citizen or a good whatever.
Sure.
But I do find it inspiring when people have a great career kind of doing things the right way professionally. Yeah. And you couldn't be more of just kind of a hardworking yet cerebral craftsman at your sport than Cal Ripken or Tony Gwynn. So yeah, I just remember that as kind of a triumph of the good guys. Like, they're both kind of like the, I don't know, Daniel Cormier's of baseball that way. Just kind of.
Yeah. I'm surprised that Cal Ripken memory is not when he broke the streak.
I thought about when he broke the streak. I thought about when he just quietly stopped breaking the streak.
They gave him that softball pitch to hit out.
Yeah.
It's like his last All-Star game. They probably put it on a tee for him. No, yeah.
Do a coach pitch.
So
like just
it's so funny that Cal Ripken played in the same division as my favorite baseball team. And I don't know anybody in this era who doesn't like Cal Ripken. I mean, everybody likes Cal Ripken. I mean, every single MLB baseball team, I don't care what fan it is, if you don't like Cal Ripken, then you got an issue. And same with Tony Gwynn, same thing. I mean, he was on the West Coast, didn't see him as much, but yeah, like, I just know if I saw him, he got a base hit. It's like, that's for damn sure. So when you said you wanted to ask this question, I live near Boston, man. You gave me there's a lot of picks. So two of them that obviously I'm gonna give I'm gonna give my answer, but I want to give like two very quick honorable mentions. Malcolm Butler jumping the route to get that interception against Seattle. The Super Bowl is it was one of the most shocking moments. I mean, I went from pure like agony that we're going to lose again and heartbreak to oh my God, it couldn't have been better. I had a Super Bowl party. I had my whole house was full of people. It was so great, all going crazy. And then the other one was same thing at a Super Bowl party when the Patriots were losing to the Falcons and they came all the way back. But my number one, and when we talk about sports moment, I'm not talking like my kids had incredible. Like I think of my daughter pitching no hitters and shit like that. You know, my son winning huge wrestling tournaments. Those are number one. Those are number one.
Of course.
You know, my wrestling stuff is number two, and then other people's stuff. But pro sports, it's 2000. I mean, this is the answer for anybody my age in Boston. It's 2004. The Boston Red Sox, when they were down 0-3 to the Yankees, come back against the heated rival, break the curse against the Cardinals to win the World Series. That the whole city of the whole southern New England, or probably all northern New England too, that's only thing people talked about for about a 10-day period was when they played the Yankees and then they end up beating the Cardinals. That was peak sports, and I've never reached that climax again. So let's read some other listeners' real ones real quick.
People are goofing around and calling us old.
Yeah. All right, so we have Bass says the 2010 San Francisco Giants win the World Series. Don't remember that. Was it Barry Bonds on the team? Damon Lillard
hitting the 3 over Paul George.
All right, I have no idea what that is.
James Harrison.
I remember that. I do remember that. That was a pretty freaking cool play. I couldn't imagine.
Matthew Chalk. I lived in Salt Lake City at the time. That was a painful memory for me. Michael Jordan just crossover, pushing off Brian Russell.
Yes, I'm glad you said pushing off. Offensive fall. The clear offensive fall.
Yep. It was MJ doing his thing at the crucial time again.
Dev mentions the 2000s Miami Hurricanes football team. Dev doesn't watch sports. He had to Google that shit. He had to find something.
No, I believe that because Dev is both young and from Florida, so I can believe that.
Yes, we got Marcus Mustard talking about
Malcolm Butler. Yep.
Yeah, it's up there. 49ers winning their 5th Super Bowl. Is that the Steve Young one? I think that's the Steve. I think the last time.
Was that it?
Yeah, Ninja Kitty calling us boomers. We are. Non-profit Packers. That was actually a really good Super Bowl. The Packers. I remember them going back and forth. Ninja Kitty saying Hulk Hogan face turn
versus the Rock at the Sky.
I don't remember that. I'm sure it was big, but that's not the. Oh no, that's when he turns good, right? Hulk Hogan turned good. No, but you got to go Hulk Hogan turn bad with the NWO. No, if you're going pro wrestling,
like
right?
When he died is like that was so weird looking.
All right, so good.
Pope says the time he beat Jimmy Stevens in Foursquare in 2nd grade. Take that, Stevens. Suck it. Matua.
Suck it, Mr. Stevens.
The Wizards kicking Michael Jordan off the It was a medical withdrawal because his knees just couldn't take carrying 4 dudes on his back anymore.
There you go.
Yeah.
And if we're going pro wrestling, I will always remember the Ultimate Warrior beating Hulk Hogan and me being about 8 years old at the time, crying because Hulk Hogan lost. I was a Hulkamaniac.
A week later, Keith was like tying ribbons around his upper arm to make like the veins stick out more. He was like a full on.
I was not at all. I was a Hulk Hogan. I remember crying that Hulk Hogan lost, and the first time I ever saw him, lose. All right, let's get to the prelims, but go through this a little quicker. A guy that he's not going to be on the prelims much longer. Josh Van took on Ray to yeah, I can't say this. Saroa, Van winning by unanimous decision. Dude, I said on the previous show, I am completely sold. This is my take it to the bank. You can't miss out. Bet your house on it. Bet. I think he's going to be UFC champion. I'm that confident. I never say that. Bo Nichols probably the only person I'm saying I'm saying this. Based on his age, he reminds me of Max Holloway. The rise of Max Holloway. I'm all in on Joshua Van.
I'm getting there as well, and it is rare that I'm bringing up the rear when it comes to getting on a Houston area bandwagon. But
by way of
Burma, yeah, Myanmar. But I mean, he's
what is
Texas.
it called? Myanmar.
Myanmar, but the people from there are Burmese.
What do you think would take longer, me flying to Houston or me finding Myanmar on a map?
That's a good question. Would it be a nonstop flight?
Yeah.
Van is already checking the boxes that are in my mind when I see a fighter in their early 20s with obvious physical gifts. I think somebody in the chat even mentioned, Josh Van learned or decided to fight in the first round. Like, he's turned into a guy.
Fights in a row, though. It's 2 fights in a row that he might have won the first round.
Mm-hmm. And like even the Charles Johnson fight, he was starting to come alive in the first round of fights, but he's getting better at winning rounds and winning fights, even when he's not blowing the doors completely off the other guy. Like here, there was an obvious skill and style mismatch from pretty early on, but even from there, Van managed to keep putting a beating on Saroa and just giving Saroa no chances. Like he quickly understood where Saruya's chances of taking over the fight were and just gave him no chance to do it. Somebody in the Sherdog editorial site, in fact, it was probably Dev, just said Van's a 22-year-old with he fights like a 32-year-old in terms of just his poise and composure.
So I want to say this real quick. Antoine Willis said, "Who do you guys think is the greatest actor of your generation?" That's what we're going to do, Antoine. We're going to save that for next week. That'll be our question. That's a great question. So we don't want to go too far off the tracks, but I didn't want to ignore you. That's a good question. So next week,
that's a great question.
That'll be our question. Just remind us if we forget. You know what I like about the performance tonight is when Josh Van goes on this run and that I believe is going to happen and he wins the UFC title. We're not going to think about this fight as oh wow, all-time great performances. But what really impressed me is I know his boxing's off the charts. He added takedown defense, like incredible takedown defense against a very high-level wrestler. And to me, that's just another major tool, like a Max Holloway with a takedown defense that we saw that, he kind of looked like, and I keep saying Max Holloway because that's what I was saying before, like without the kicks, a little bit of a Jose Aldo, with prime Jose Aldo out there with his striking,
I don't hate that either.
Defense and his hip control. And
I heard, probably just because he was in the crowd, so we saw him, but I saw some Chuck Liddell comparisons. A very updated version, but just the idea that Liddell, nobody could take him down, and he had nasty power in both hands. Yeah.
Sure.
Like Van.
The one thing I wish he would have done, I think he should have went. He went to the body, especially late. I think he should have went to the body earlier because he was headhunting a little bit, which was giving Saroa the opportunities to shoot underneath, try to get the hips. I think that's when you go to the body more, so he can't kind of really duck under. If you duck under, you kind of get eaten with punches to the jaw. That's the one thing I think Van made a mistake. I think he could have went to the body. As far as Saroa, I don't think it was a bad showing. Like he got beat, but I'm still kind of on him too. What I like is he showed incredible cardio for a guy who wants to wrestle. Like if he could be like a Japanese Marab, like he'll go really far.
Yeah. Yeah. He has a lot to take back to the drawing board, but he's young and he can do it. If he were not at least somewhat one-dimensional at this age with his lengthy amateur wrestling background, that would be more of a surprise. So yeah, I'm not off the bandwagon with him entirely either. Somebody asked what we would do with him. I looked into matchmaking for
Saroa or Van?
For Saroa.
Oh, I didn't have anybody written down. But good.
No, well, I'm just thinking, give him another, a fellow young flyweight who preferably one that's coming off a loss as well. You know.
Yeah, I think I'd give him like a bottom of the barrel. Like let him recover, let him get a win. He's so young. There's no reason to rush him. As far as Van, I mean, he keeps winning. I'm giving him a huge step up in competition. I'm giving him Kai Asakura. Like I'm that sold. Like I think 3 fights from now he could be champion.
I'm fine. I'm fine with that. The only thing that would give me pause at all is that Asakura is coming off a loss, but
it is a title fight.
Yeah,
and, like that's a huge step up in competition.
That's a massive step up in competition. I'm fine with that. I mean, yeah.
Before that, Bruno Ferreira took on Armin Petruzian. Bruno Ferreira winning by second round submission. I don't think a lot of people had that box checked. I don't think people had confidence Ferreira gets a submission, but I don't think anybody didn't have confidence that Petruzian would get subbed. So, but the thing that really shocking, how about the rare point deduction? Nice job.
Love it. Good job, Mark Smith. Love it.
I mean, there was Ferreira hit a beautiful armbar. That said, I'm not sold on Ferreira. Like I think this has more to say with Petruzian. I think the wrestling was smart. I think Petruzian was starting to have his way on the feet. But the wrestling entries they didn't look good. He kind of just ducked his head and charged at him like a freaking bull. But
yeah, there was no finesse to these takedowns. But
Petruzian has lost 3 in a row. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the last we see Petruzian in the UFC. But even more, this might be the last we see him in MMA. Like I could see this guy doing like the freaking combat karate thing or something that's more stand up oriented.
Quick reminder that Armin Petruzian is somebody that the Sherdog Fight Finder has to add results for a lot of fighters that they try to get taken off their record, but it's usually a loss. This guy, his handlers tried to get one of his wins hidden from Sherdog because they were so embarrassed. Like back in 2021, when he had his first professional loss, they did a bounce back fight for him like 6 weeks later against some like barely trained obese dude at heavyweight. Petruzian knocked him out in like 14 seconds. And they actually paid the promoter or begged the promoter not to send that result to like Sherdog and Tapology along with the rest of the card because like they were embarrassed of the win. Someone who is okay with that and whose handlers have that mentality, I wouldn't be surprised if we never see him in MMA again either.
Yeah. Well, he might want to find that guy because now it might be the only guy he can beat. But yeah, but first of all, John Butterfield, I don't know why you really want to see Bruno Ferreira take on Renier Dorita. I don't know why you want to do that, but yeah, I mean, if that's the fight you want to see. Before that, your boy Alex Morono took on Carlos Seal. Carlos Seal winning by first round TKO. Let's talk about the winner first. Carlos Seal. He's had 2. He lost his UFC debut. Most people thought he should have won that. Do you believe in Leo? Because he looked good.
He did. He is an effective striker. Like I feel like he throws a pretty basic repertoire of strikes really, really hard. Like, and that'll carry you a long way. Hell, like if I say that he reminds me of like a welterweight Rumble Johnson, like that's, where, Rumble was not like, he was not Israel Adesanya from a repertoire of strikes. He just threw a basic arsenal of strikes stupidly hard. Like Carlos Leal Morono has that same kind of feel to me. It's more than enough to get him past, the Alex Moronos of the world. It should have been enough to get him past Renat Fakhretdinov. And if he had gotten the deserved decision that, in that debut, he would have been fighting like a borderline top 15 fighter tonight, like not Alex.
Yeah. Poor Alex got the blunt of that bad decision. I like what I saw from Leo. I mean, I think DC said it best. He wasn't threatened by Morono at all. He didn't respect his skill set. He just marched him down, knew like he was a huge favorite. He knew what he had to do, and he did it. He got right to it. He looked really good. As far as Morono, I think he needs to retire. It's not that I don't think he could fight in the UFC. I think there's guys in the UFC he could beat. If Alex Morono, if he was a distance kickboxer, a little lower output distant kickboxer, I'd say yeah, you can stick around. If he was a guy that went for takedowns and grind against the clinch, or that, you know what, if he was like Clay Guida, I'd be like, okay. The problem is the way he fights. Like I said, he could beat guys in the UFC, but he's going to take, like, he's too tough for his own good. That he's going to take on, even in wins, he's going to take so much damage. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's easy for me to say I'm not getting the paychecks, but he seems, I know you're one of his students, and he seems like a really, like, I've met him before. He seems like a great dude, and he seems like a guy to be really good full-time coach. I want him to just go. He
is a very good dude, and the gym is successful, and it's not successful because he's in the UFC, like, because alongside upcoming amateur and professional fighters, he's also got what really keeps the light on for gyms, like ladies coming to self-defense classes, 9-year-olds in jiu-jitsu or kid kickboxing classes. Yeah, like his gym is very nice and very busy, and he has other irons in the fire. I hope he at least he at least gives it some thought.
And he's got murals on the wall, they were saying.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Like, so Ben, before we move on to the next fight, so one thing that was unusual for us this week is our preview show went up went up one day late this week. It went up on Monday went up Tuesday morning instead of Monday morning. I'm blaming you for that.
Oh yeah.
So one thing we really appreciate all our listeners, anybody who listen to our show. We don't want to mess up anybody's schedule. So your punishment, Ben, is you have to tweet that you have to say that your boy Alex Morono deserves to be put in the UFC Hall of Fame, and then just defend that. Don't say it was a lost bet. You just got to keep defending it to everybody's comments.
Okay.
Without telling them it's a punishment. Before that, and this is going to be probably the most talked about prelim fight. Francis Marshall took on Mario Santos. Mario Santos winning a split decision. Ben, I don't say this often. I don't know if I've ever said this on the show. And I got to rewatch that. But, dude, this might have been a robbery. It was 13-0 on MMA decisions for Francis Marshall. I had
and most of them had all 3 rounds for Marshall.
I had it 3 rounds for Marshall. How did you score it?
I scored it 30-27 Marshall. I think there is a case to be made for Santos winning 1 round, but not 2, and definitely not 3. The one judge that turned in a 30-27 scorecard for Santos just needs.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize someone sent in a 30-27 for Santos. I mean, there's no way you could score the first round for him. I mean, he was winning the round, and then he got dropped, and it wasn't like he was like way ahead. Like he was, slightly ahead in the first round. Then he got dropped and almost knocked out.
Derek Cleary.
That guy sucks.
Derek Cleary that I stick up for like basically every week because Buffer still can't say his name right. Well, guess what, Derek Cleary? You need a vacation.
Yeah, that was really bad.
Some bullshit.
One thing I will say, the best part is I love when the commentators aren't company men. Like they say like the scorecards was trash. I mean, Johnny Ennick said that scorecard was trash. Joe Rogan was like, yeah, no, he did not win that fight. DC all 3 of them bashed the scorecards. As far as the action, I still feel higher on Santos than Marshall moving forward. Though I thought Marshall looked good. The difference, I think Marshall's fought really smart. He never let Santos get going. Every single time he'd start getting his rhythm, Marshall would come back, would either shoot on him or get a takedown or land a combination, and just kept breaking up the rhythm that I feel like Santos never was able to get out of first gear.
I no, completely agree. I'll say this: Marshall looked different physically. Like he looked in better shape. I thought of him as kind of a middling athlete for the division, but against the guy who is a fast twitch freak in Santos, he wasn't left in the dust. So physically, he looked better. I did think he fought a smart fight. He fought to disrupt the fighter that gets really dangerous when he gets in a groove. That's brilliant. Thought he deserved to win this fight. Yeah.
So the chat is saying that clearly scored it for Marshall. So if we're wrong with that, we apologize. Anyway, before that, Ozzy Diaz took on DeJordan Santos.
Let me just get this out of the way. No, Cleary scored it 30-27 Santos. If you're looking at MMA decisions, he's got it backwards.
Okay.
MMA decisions has it backwards.
Okay. Ozzy Diaz took on DeJordan Santos. Diaz win by unanimous decision. We'll get to the scorecards, but what a freaking fight this was. It's not often Justin Gaethje fight might have got actually outshadowed. And the funny thing about this fight, the first 3 minutes sucked. The crowd was booing.
Oh, yeah.
And then they started punching each other and didn't stop till the rest of the fight.
And, I mean, kind of like the Gaethje and Fiziev fight. It wasn't that it was furiously paced. Like, just it was so violent. They were throwing at a moderate clip, but just everything had murderous intent on it. Yeah. I mean, this was the lowest of low-level fights.
Yes.
Good to see Osman Diaz get a win, but I have two running notes in my note section here. Note one is Jordan Santos looks like a welterweight, and then about 5 minutes later, Jordan Santos looks like a tired welterweight.
I will say this: I dogged Ozzy based on tape, so I did not think he looked like a UFC fighter. But I'll give it to him. He was a warrior tonight. I know a lot of people actually scored the fight for Santos. I didn't. It was 12-2 on decisions. I gave it for Diaz, but it really came down to the second round. Diaz won the third. Santos won the first. Came down the second. Both had their moments. I thought the more effective striking of Diaz, and I thought he was more effective, while Santos had more volume. So I think that's kind of came down to. But I'm okay with anybody who scored the fight for Santos. How did you score the fight?
I scored the fight 29-28 Santos. I gave him the first 2 rounds. I gave Diaz the 3rd round.
Okay. Yeah, which is cool. I mean, I thought that second round was super close. So that's why, like, if even a 12-2 on MMA decisions does not show like robbery. Like, nobody's calling this a robbery that Diaz won. I mean, the fight was so friggin', it was so bad. It was such a banger. I will say this: the reason why guys landed so much, I think it had less to do with their effective offense and more about their poor defense.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't feel like either guy is going to win a lot of fights in the UFC.
I mean, I agree. But having said that, Santos being like 7 years younger and pretty obviously suited to the next weight class down, I could see him turning into something. Whereas, I mean, Diaz, like I say, I'm glad Diaz got a win in the UFC. Yeah.
All right, let's get to the we covered all the prelims and all of the fights of the card. Let's get to the fun stuff. I just said that this could be fight of the night and even fight of the year candidate. Let's get to the awards. Do we have the awards, Ben?
I'm sure we have. Yes, we have a fight of the night. We have 2 performances of the night, and I'm A-okay with them. Okay,
I'm going to guess that the UFC gave fight of the night to Gaethje and Fiziev, but I wouldn't. I would actually give it to Diaz and Santos. As far as, and I want you to give what you would do, and then we'll give the chat. To me, Duffy, no brainer, knockout. I mean, his knockout, no brainer performance.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna go Bahamondes.
Your performances of the night go to Mauricio Hufi for his spectacular knockout of Bobby Green, and Ignacio Bahamondes for his finish of Jalen Turner.
You agree with those?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Your fight of the night is Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. Yeah. I understand why you gave it to him, obviously.
Incredible fight, no doubt.
But if it's even close, but there's one pair of fighters for whom that is like life-changing money.
Yeah.
Like there's a good chance that neither Jordan Santos nor Ozzy Diaz ever win another fight in the UFC. So something that basically more than doubles their fight and win bonus. Like, give it to those guys.
And it was a better fight. I mean, obviously Gaethje and Fiziev was fantastic too, but that fight was freaking incredible. Like, I think it's a fight of the year candidate. But you know what? Throw in the chat which fight you think was better, Gaethje Fiziev versus Diaz Santos. I think obviously placement on the card always holds more weight. People get more excited. Like obviously the skill set of two of them is Gaethje Fiziev was more skilled than Diaz Santos, but the Diaz Santos landed more strikes. But some of the people are saying Gaethje Fiziev was better, so okay, I could stand corrected. But you guys are all wrong. I'm right. Let's do the cut list.
Okay.
The way we do the cut list, if both me and Ben have the same names on the cut list, we allow the UFC to get rid of that person. Ben, I have 2 names for the cut list. How many do you have?
I have 2 as well.
Okay. Are you getting rid of your boy? Because I am.
Yeah. If I'm the UFC, I'm letting Alex Morono go, and if I'm Alex's family and closest friends, I'm secretly relieved.
Yeah, I would be too. He's lost 3 in a row. I mean, I could see him do like BJJ stuff like that. If he wants to do that kind of competitions and stuff, go for it. The other guy, you give me the other guy. Let's see if we are in agreement.
I was going to let Armin Petruzian go.
We are unanimous. I was a Petruzian guy. I still think he's fun, but he sucks on the ground. So the cut list is complete. We are letting 2 people go. Ninja Kitty is saying get rid of Bobby Green. Bobby Green's lost a really.
So do John Butterfield and Nonprofit 87. The only thing I throw out there is the UFC is in really short supply of fighters that are not top contenders but could still plausibly headline a fight night as the B-side. Green is one of those few. He gets at least one more fight. Yeah,
he's lost nothing but studs too, and he can still talk on the mic. I'd give him a little bit more. Ninja Kitty also cuts Bob Simpson, which we all do.
I think Bob Simpson retired before you could cut him, at least from tonight's chat. So,
well, in fairness, we all lost an hour of sleep. If your country that you're in does daylight saving time, it's almost 4 a.m. now as we lost an hour. Let's do dude seriously. I only have 2 dude seriouslys, Ben. I was not paying attention as much as I normally do.
Hit me with what you've got and let me see if I can think.
All right. And a positive dude seriously. Saroa hitting not 1, but 2 Japanese whizzers against Josh Van. If you know what that was, that DC kept calling an arm throw in wrestling. Some people call it like an arm throw. A lot of times it would be called a Japanese whizzer. So pretty cool to see. You don't see that a lot in wrestling. So, and definitely don't see it a lot in MMA. So give my boy Saroa like, dude, seriously, nice job. And my other one, I'm gonna do this just because John Anik said something. We get into it was a pay-per-view broadcast. They do the big long rant. They're talking for like 20, 25 minutes before the first fight. And they're like, all right, we never want to take your viewership for granted. Let's get into it. And I'm like, they want to take our viewership for granted. Dude, seriously? You charge 80 freaking bucks for a pay-per-view. You're the most expensive.
And then still run commercials doing it.
Yeah. Dude, that literally was setting up what I was going to say.
Oh.
Goes, we don't want to take your viewership for granted. Let's get into it. And then it went right to a commercial. Like, dude, seriously? You run commercials. It's the most expensive sport in the world to be a fan of.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're dropping 70, 80 bucks every single month, not counting, ESPN Plus memberships, Fight Pass, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
The tickets are ridiculously expensive to go to. and then like you start at freaking like you lost 2 fights instead of like moving it up an hour. No, we still have to end at freaking 1:30 in the morning.
Yep.
Like, dude, seriously, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. It's too late to go on how far I want to do. But come on, like, don't insult us. You already got up money. Don't insult us on top of it. And I like John Anik, but dude, seriously, God, what do you have?
I'll throw it out for Chael Son. And now I understand that generally speaking, Son's job at this point is just to yell stuff real loud. That's kind of wild and over the top. But there are certain subjects that he's being fairly serious and fairly straightforward. So for him to say that like he would really like to see Justin Gaethje wrestle tonight in the co-main event, it's like, dude, seriously. Like,
he can't wrestle. He can't wrestle anymore. He got 1 takedown, big deal. He can't wrestle anymore. He was an All-American wrestler 20 years ago. He was an
All-American wrestler 20 years ago. He has literally been a knockout artist for his entire MMA career. It was, come on, man.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the Bulls and the Bears. The Bulls and Bears is a stock market reference. You want to be on the Bulls list. You do not want to be on the Bears list. We do it hockey style, like stars of the night, 3, 2, 1. Let's go Bears. Let's go negative. Do you mind if I go first?
Go for it.
All right, my number 3 Bear. It's gonna be Alex Pereira. You're the biggest. You might be the face of the sport. Everything's going the right way. And suddenly you lost your belt, man. Like, it's not career ending, but I was ready to talk about, is he a top 10 fighter ever? I had like all these, because I kind of mentally prep what we got to talk about on the recap show, and I thought that's something we might bring up, and we're not doing that, dude. We're talking about if he can make his way back. So Alex Pereira's stock obviously dropped. My number 2, I'm going to go with the judges. I don't do the judges a lot, but the judges in the Santos Francis Marshall fight was horrendous. Like, I don't know if they could ever get lower, but that was I can't imagine a worse scorecard than that one. And my number 1, Jalen Turner. And this is a guy that had a lot of buzz at one point, like a rising star in the division. Kind of, dude lost 4 out of 5. He's lost his studs. He doesn't have a bad loss, but eventually you got to win. You got to win some. Jalen Turner. What do you have?
I agree with all yours, so I won't bother piling 3 more full ones on top, but I will say full guard. I mean, you, even more than I do, will just harp on playing jiu-jitsu from the bottom is not it's not a replicable route to victory in modern MMA. It hasn't been for like 15 years. And tonight we had multiple fighters that, I mean, Myron Santos should have lost. Yasmin Lucendo did lose. Just, if you get taken down and you close up your guard for 5 seconds while you're like shaking off cobwebs because you got knocked down, or just because at your gym everything starts from full guard, that's one thing. But if you still have full guard and an overhook 30 seconds in, I'm like, I hope the ref never stands this up because you were just stalling.
Yeah,
like,
look what Bahamondes did with an open guard compared to what these guys are doing. Yeah, and I get obviously skill set's different, but yeah, good point.
Yeah, but closed guard is literally conceding the position. You're saying we're not going anywhere.
Yeah. It's like a defensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll throw that out there, and we kind of opened the show talking about it. Just, how much revenue did the UFC lose over the next year because of tonight's result? But I'll even say just specifically light heavyweight. It's easy to forget now just what a godsend Alex Pereira was to light heavyweight in the first place, because it was getting to be a division where everybody was getting old and all the top guys had fought each other already.
Yeah.
Now we have a champ who, he's not that old, but he's been around forever. He's fought so many of the top contenders.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, he might defend this title for a while and they won't be barn burners. Like, so light heavyweight is my big bear of the night.
Do it. Oh my God. I'm not. That's. Don't tell Trump he's gonna change that. It's gonna be like Golf of America. That's gonna be changed to the American Wizard. All right, let's go to the Bulls. This is the list you want to be on. Same thing we do 3, 2, 1. Ben, I'll let you kick it off.
Okay. I'll go for the bottom. Ozzy Diaz. He is a marginal UFC talent. He got smoked on the Contender Series. He wasn't that great regionally. I am legit happy that he has a win in the UFC, and it was a well-earned one over a guy that was beating him for a minute, and it was in a great fight. So big ups to Ozzy Diaz. He now has something he'll be able to tell his kids and grandkids. Stock up for Josh Van. You're on board. I'm on board. The UFC is getting there, and he's a guy that, he hasn't said much outrageous yet, but he's a guy that has an engaging enough personality that once they start getting the mic in his face, he's going to turn out to be a really likable fighter. And then, for me, a screamingly obvious top one would be Fight Nerds again, not just because of the success in the cage, but they're to the point where you've got this group of Brazilians, about half of whom speak decent enough English to get through an interview. Half of them don't. And they're getting serious pop when the camera pans to them. Something as simple as a bunch of fake nerd glasses from the dollar store. Just something that's memorable. It makes it magnifies everything they do. Big night for the fighting nerds. Hottest camp in the sport.
Those guys are killing it. So my top 3 Bulls, kind of right off the same thing you're saying. Mercio Ruffy, just him in particular. This guy is superstar as one. Not just being part of the team, but the way he's winning, spinning wheels, knockouts, the buzz he got this week during. He's in Las Vegas, and there's a the Mercio Ruffy chant while he's fighting Bobby Green. So he's my number 3. My number 2. I'm going to break a rule. I always give somebody the number 1 spot when they win a UFC title for the first time. This time I'm not going to. I'm going to give Magomed Ankalaev the number 2 spot. Now, again, not the most bond burner fight, but you're in the record books forever no matter what happens. You beat one of the biggest stars. Who you beat was huge. So Magomed Ankalaev. And Iman Report kind of stole my buzz a little, but the number 1 winner tonight, it's Tom Aspinall. Why? Why is it Tom Aspinall? Because the talk was John Jones fighting Alex Pereira. That ain't an option right now, which means if John Jones wants to fight, there's only one option for him, and that's Tom Aspinall. That's the fight that all the fans want. John Jones can't say anymore, oh, it's got to be Alex Pereira. He's the bigger star. He's the guy. He's the double. He's going for a double champion. At least until now, he can't use that. Now Pereira could come back and win the title, but right now, if John Jones is fighting International Fight Week, Tom Aspinall is the only option on the other side. So to me, Tom Aspinall is actually the biggest winner tonight. As he's going to get that. It just helps his chance of getting that big fight. So, Ben, what was your grade for the card?
Give it a straight B. Yeah, it had a couple of highlights that we'll be talking about all year. It had 2 very, very, very good fights. It's going to be a memorable one. It's the beginning of the Ankalaev era. I'll give it a B.
Yeah, I went B-. I almost went C+. The main event, even though it was very, very competitive, it brought it down a little bit to me because I wanted to be more action. But again, it wasn't it wasn't super boring, but yeah, it was okay. The fact that I lost a minute of the Justin Gaethje fight for ESPN problems, which I got another dude seriously. But yeah, I'm overall pretty happy. John Jones versus Brock Lesnar. That's true. That is another option. Or they could bring DC back. We have a 3rd DC fight. Who is your listener of the night?
Oh, you know what? Definitely rookie of the night, I believe. This is Nonprofit 87's first time visiting us. Thank you. Made me laugh several times. I'm going to give it to Matua for just like coming up and just jabbing me with like funny observations over and over again all night. I threw a couple up on the screen, but like, asking about one suggested matchup, like it depends on what color Kai Asakura's hair is, like whether he'd pick him to win or not, just stuff like that was getting me all night. So good job, Matua.
Yeah, I always write 2 names down in case you if I'm going to go second, in case you're going to pick the one I said. So Matua was one of them. The other name you said too, I'm going to give it to my man. He had a lot of good volume. Nonprofit 87, some funny stuff, good insight. But shout out to everybody in the chat. Obviously, a lot of the usuals: Marcus Mustard, John Butterfield, Dev. There's a whole bunch. I don't want to keep them all, but I'm in report. So, anyways, there you guys have it. We have gone deeper than any recap show, we believe, does it. We covered all the fights. We'll be back. We'll be previewing UFC Vettori versus Delice 2. That'll be posted early Monday morning, and then we'll be back this time next week, recapping all that action. So thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you guys for all in the chat for making it fun, and we'll see you guys next week. Shama.
Cool. That was a